Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. Happy San Diego Comic-Con week for all those that celebrate. Uh, this is your DC Spotlight for the week of July 23rd, 2025. I mentioned this on the last episode that it's so interesting because these books will tend to get lost in the shuffle. They just it's just the way it is. There's so much news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con for DC Comics and otherwise, right? Multiple levels, right? DC Comics is going to have a bunch of announcements there. Marvel will have a bunch of announcements, a bunch of other, Image and all kinds of other self-publish and other companies, Mad Cave and everybody, like tons of comic announcements. And even those comic announcements get drowned out somewhat by other pop culture announcements for film and TV, which is just a bigger platform. More people enjoy those mediums, and that's a whole nother debate for a different day. On whether that's worthy or not, whether TV and film and other announcements should overshadow comic announcements at Comic-Con. It is what it is. But all that being said, I feel bad. I talked about it before. Like maybe this week should be a hiatus from releasing comics, because these books, even if they're really good, and there are some fantastic books this week from DC, they just don't get the attention that they would had they been released in another week of the year. That's just the way that it goes. On top of which, and there is a little bit of fortuitousness when it comes to the scheduling, this year, and obviously DC doesn't have any control over the calendar and the way things are. But next week, the 30th of July, is a fifth week, is a fifth Tuesday. And in typical fifth week fashion, it's specials and annuals and what have you. So there's fewer books next week, and they're not necessarily books in the main line. I mean, the regular Flash issue comes out, but it will, allow us a little more time, because, ideally we would have recorded this week and next week and already have it in the can before we can go to San Diego. Because let's face it, we're going to both get home, the Monday following the con. We're going to be tired. We're probably not going to record that day. Hopefully we can record it Tuesday to drop it Wednesday before it comes out, but we're still going to be recovering from the trip and getting caught up on work and whatever. So I say all that to warn everybody ahead of time. It's entirely possible that the episode for the July 30th books may be late, warning you guys all ahead of time. But, it is what it is. Our tentative plan right now is, since Rocky and I will be together in the same place geographically, which has only happened, on one other instance, when he came to visit for Phoenix Comic-Con 2024. And we had so much fun, and I look forward to the next time Rocky gets to come and hopefully bring his family and whatever, and we can hang out here in my hometown. But yeah, we're both going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. So the plan is, I'm sure you guys would all enjoy it, to hear about our con experience, me from a perspective of, what coverage did I get, what announcements did I get to ask creators about, and just, overall feel of the con from somebody who's been going. This is my 15th year, I think. But also to hear from Rocky, and I'm going to love to sit down with him on Sunday night after the con's over, because neither one of us is leaving until Monday, so we'll have a little time to kind of relax and unwind, and maybe have a nice cool beverage, and give you guys the recap and talk about the exciting stuff that happened, and again, getting Rocky's perspective on what he thought was best, and what he loved and his experience or whatever. So that episode's going to be coming out next week as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot, again, like I've already done interviews. If you guys head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel, there's already, preview interviews up. I interviewed a director named Ashley Maria. She has a film called Superhuman Anxiety that's in both the film festivals, both the Children's Film Festival and the San Diego Comic-Con International Film Festival, that's going to be released there. I had a chance to talk to the organizer of the Fandom Party, which is the biggest party every year at San Diego. Everyone is trying to get into. It's Thursday night of the convention. If you're there, you want to go. It's already sold out, but go listen to that episode. It's not long. It's maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and you can find out how you can win tickets. There's still some giveaway tickets available. So, yeah, lots going on. San Diego, obviously going to be absorbing all our attention over this next week. Be sure you're following the Comic Source on social media as well. Be posting throughout the convention. If you want to meet up with me, and maybe you want to meet up with me and Rocky and take a photo, if you're a listener, if you're out there in the audience, we would love that. So yeah, definitely follow us or follow the Comic Source on social media to find out where I'm at, what's going on, whatever. I never post as many photos as I probably should, but I always promise myself going into it that I'm going to do more this year. Just gets so busy with everybody wanting to talk and seeing friends and whatever. So yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And part of what I'm looking forward to the most is experiencing the con for the first time vicariously through Rocky and see what he's excited about. And hopefully, I mean, again, I'm already so busy, like running from place to place to place. I'm really hoping that I get a chance, Rocky, to hang out with you at some point on the show floor and introduce you to some creators. Because that's always a good time as well. So all that being said, with all that out of the way, I thought it was a pretty solid week of DC books with some real highlights. I actually had a tough time picking my book of the week, and there is one book that is in Rocky's top 5 that's not in my top 5, and vice versa, which is interesting. But based on what those books are, didn't really surprise me either. But anyway, give us your thoughts on the week overall, Rocky, for DC, and also for the fact you're going to be jumping on a plane and heading to Comicon soon.
Yeah, well, I've spent the last couple weeks planning my doing my schedule for San Diego Comic-Con along with another guy you'll meet up there, Steve. So we're both we're both virgins when it comes to the San Diego Comic-Con, and we've had a lot of fun just sort of planning what we're going to be doing. And uh, we're not we're just into the comic books, and we're fairly easy going, but we there's so much to do, and we took your advice, and very wisely we pre-planned a lot of what we want to see, so we're looking forward to it. And so we're going to be landing in there Wednesday early afternoon, so we're going to be having a great time. And yeah, and this week in comics, it was um yeah, it was a decent week again. It was I have a my top 5 are not was I found it was easy for me to choose my top 5, generally speaking. But it was another good week where I mean, even the ones I mean, there's 12 comics we're reviewing this week. The bottom I mean, the bottom 6 were actually pretty decent too. There's a couple of stickers, but I'll hold my rants to a minimum. But one in particular, I think is going to shock people that I actually put on this list. Um, but in any event, it's a great time to be a DC fan, a great time to be a Superman fan, and a Darkseid fan, and an Absolute Universe fan. I mean, it's a good stuff. This is so great. It's so unfortunate that people are focusing on San Diego Comic-Con and maybe not focusing on the comics this week. But we get the best of both worlds. We get to review and enjoy SDCC.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say, great news to hear that the Superman movie continues to do very well. Had really good carryover into the second weekend. There are so many. I'm not going to get into it. There's plenty of YouTube videos. You can go out there and check out all the exclusive comics at San Diego Comic-Con. I feel like there's more exclusive comics this year than ever before. Plenty of exclusive Superman stuff. Blind bags from KRS with Power Girl, which gorgeous art, but $75. And you do get 3 books. So you're talking about $25 for some, pretty limited exclusives, but that's so much money.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, Superman continues to do well. Plenty of Superman content and what have you. So yeah, really great week. Great to see Superman on the thoughts and minds of comic collectors, and Fantastic Four. Would be remiss to not mention Fantastic Four First Steps comes out this week. I wasn't planning on seeing it anyway. Honestly, one of the things I loved most and was looking forward to the most about the Superman movie was the casting. I love the casting. I'm a big fan of the actors that were cast, and they all did a fantastic job. On the other hand, the Fantastic Four, like I don't really care for any of those actors, and I don't. And again, I'm not the biggest MCU guy, but on top of my personal feelings for those actors and not having a great affinity for any of them, I don't particularly find the casting to be very interesting. Like I don't. When I look at Pedro Pascal and to all accounts, he's a great guy. Whatever, I don't know, never met him. I can't speak to that. But I certainly didn't enjoy him in the Wonder Woman movie. I haven't watched The Mandalorian. I've seen him in a few other things, and I've never really been impressed by his acting ability. But I certainly he is. I don't know where he would be in the ranking
He's
for Reed Richards.
overexposed. He's overexposed in the eyes of many people.
And beyond that, I just never in my life have I ever looked at Pedro Pascal and thought, oh, Reed Richards. So I just don't like the casting. So I had no plans to go see that film anyway, because it honestly does. And from all the previews and everything that I've seen, it hasn't. And I would like to see a really cool Silver Surfer on the big screen, but Norrin Rad, like I'm not, it's not a deal breaker for me that it's a female, that it's Shala Ball instead, whatever. But it's just one more reason for me not to go and see it. But all that being said, it's not for me. I'm not my particular cup of tea. I hope everybody that goes and sees it enjoys it, and it's a much better film than it appears to be for me. But yeah, definitely not for me. But I bring it up to just say, like, having that released during the week of San Diego Comic-Con is an interesting choice. I mean, obviously, far more people don't go to Comic-Con, in terms of people that are going to be a fan for them, of that movie. Far more comic fans don't get to go to San Diego Comic-Con than do get to go to San Diego Comic-Con. But I still feel like it's an interesting week to release it, because for what I was exactly saying about the week of DC books and Marvel books and all the books that come out this week, they don't get as much attention as they would. Comic book releases, no matter what company they come from, just don't get as much attention this week because of all the other news. There's no way the Fantastic Four movie gets as much of attention this week, releasing the same week of San Diego Comic-Con, as if it was released last week or next week or in a few weeks. I just find the timing to release that film in the midst of San Diego Comic-Con baffling. That is baffling to me. It's like somebody saying, okay, let's have this awesome, I don't know, let's bring in some old NFL football stars and have like a kind of an old timers or all pro or all century game. And let's have it on the same day as the Super Bowl, right? It's the same audience. It's the same audience that's going to watch those things. And you have it on the same day that they're going to watch the Super Bowl. That's the new thing. It just baffles me, these decisions that Marvel's been making for the MCU lately. So anyway, I didn't mean to rant, but I did want to bring that up, that I'm sure there will be a lot of talk of a Fantastic Four film this week, along with San Diego Comic-Con and whatever. But you mentioned throwing your schedule together, Rocky, and you and Steve and I had a conversation about, just from my experience, what's the best thing to do, whatever. I'm curious, did you find times where it was like, man, I really want to go to both these panels, but I don't know. Oh, I want to go to this panel and this panel, but they're at the same time, or they overlap. But there's also this autograph session at the same time.
Yeah.
Did you find where there was like, oh man, there's like three things I want to do, but they happen to all be at the same time?
Yeah. To be very blunt, I've got overlap, and I did that on purpose because, quite frankly, depending on where I am, if I happen to be because if it's crowded and I happen to be 20 minutes from someplace, but this place is closer, I've got enough overlap there that I will, if I have to, if there's a couple of Mattel things I want to go check out, a buddy there, he wants me to buy him some Lego. If I'm closer to the Lego presentation, I'll go to that. Or if I'm closer to the Bilkers Heverly signing or panel, I'll go to that. Or if Paul Levitt's autograph, I'll go to that. I've got multiple options, but at least I know what I've prioritized it, so I'll have that game plan. And Steve is along the same way. So
and depending on who it is for autographs, sometimes you need to get there 20 minutes before to get in line, because they cap the line.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. But then I read all that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's other times where if you just go like the last 10 minutes of their signing, then you don't, the line could be gone already. It depends on the depends on the person. Obviously, they try to do wristbands for the biggest, like McFarlane and Julie and that sort of thing. They're going to do wristbands for that sort of. But I'm the same way. I mean, there's times I need to be in three places at once. Plus, I have the obligations of press stuff as well, and then just the way it works out. Like Sunday is always the lightest day. And there's actually only three panels that I would be interested in going to. But two of those panels on Sunday go from 11 to 12, and the third panel goes from 11:30 to 12:30. So, that's the day I could go to all three of those panels, but it just so happens that they're all at the same time. So it's so frustrating. So frustrating. So anyway, definitely a first world problem. Everybody out there's going, I would like to have that problem to decide which panel I'm going to. But anyway, let's dive into the books. Interesting here as I'm looking at the rankings, because we're going to kick it off with Absolute Martian Manhunter number 5. So there's only one other issue before it goes on hiatus, I think, until December. So it continues to be written by Deniz Camp. The art is by Javier Rodriguez. Letters by Hassan Otsman-Elhaou. Obviously, Javier Rodriguez is handling his own art. This comes in at number 8 for me. It didn't make Rocky's top 5 either. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, other than it still continues to be a really, really interesting book. But all of the things I've said before about it continue to be true. I don't know how this fits in with the other, how well it fits in with the other Absolute Universe titles, especially if eventually we're going to get an absolute universe Justice League, because this character and John Jones, it just feels so different and so out there. But it also feels like we're not getting anywhere. Like in terms of each individual issue being interesting and thought provoking, that still remains true. But we're not getting. It doesn't feel, at least to me, like we're getting any closer to answering any of sort of the bigger questions that have been going on since issue 1, issue 2. And for me, it's getting a little frustrating. I would like to be moving the overall plot forward rather than the small plot, if that makes sense. So, but the art continues to be excellent. Gorgeous colors, and I'm completely on board with the hiatus, because they could have had some fill-in artists come in. But Dennis Camp's like, there is no absolute Martian Manhunter without Javier Rodriguez's art. And I tend to agree. This is a completely different book if you put a different artist on there. So I'm totally on board with them taking some time off to, first of all, let Javier catch his breath. And second of all, to, allow him time to work a little bit ahead of schedule. So if it comes back in December, rather than having skip months, right? Like we know we're going to have, a couple months. We're not going to have one in August, September, or October, or November. He could have 2 in the can already, so then we get December, January, February, March, April, through the end of the series. I'd rather have that than have it scheduled and then push back or late or fill in artists, or Javier, does some of the book, but not all of the book, whatever. I much rather would know, like, hey, this is the way to do it, right? As opposed to Batman Hush, which we'll talk about in a minute with what they did. But I do hope when it comes back in December, and we are going to, I misspoke. We are going to have another issue in August, because this is issue 5. They're going to go on hiatus after issue 6. So we get another issue in August, and then we get those skip months, and then it picks back up in January or December. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky? I think this book has been in your top 5 up until this issue.
That's right. I ranked this at number 9 this week, and it's still very interesting to me, but I'm starting to question if I'm understanding the book correctly. And it's one of those things where, we have John Jones, the main character here, who's essentially utilizing, because of his merging with the Martian Manhunter or whatever, he can kind of see different colors, and the different colors that come from people's breath or heads or ears. He can decipher what they're up to and what they're thinking, and in some ways he can understand their motivations in their past. But yet, I'm a little bit confused this issue. I'm not really sure what all these colors mean. I'm not sure what all the convergence of the colors mean. There's groups of people riding scooters that are surrounded with different colors, and there's the collage of colors, which clearly shows Javier Rodriguez's amazing ability to illustrate and to render. I really don't know how I'm supposed to interpret all these colors. I can venture a guess in the I suppose the context of the story, but I'm still confused. I'm not sure what there might be scenes where why is the smoke from John Jones' cigarette green? Always, is that supposed to signify something? Or we'll have a half of a tree is a shade of red. One of the characters has a round white bulb. Are we supposed to understand that that's the white Martian manifesting through that one character? I'm not sure where, there seems to be pages where the entire head of one of the characters is covered with a white round circle. Am I to understand that the white Martian is in the process of possessing that human? I think, I don't know. The final pages, or second final page, is it's really gorgeous. It shows one of the characters with presumably all these, again, a collage of colors. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to believe is happening here. So I really wish there was. I wish there was almost like a 2-page. I wish there was a letters page where Javier Rodriguez would explain. Actually, I would buy a director's cut of this. I would spend $5, $6. To buy a director's cut of this series, to maybe spoon feed me a little bit and explain what some of the colors mean, because it's absolutely gorgeous. I just feel that I'm probably missing out on maybe an appreciation of the story. And I know that might be an underhanded insult. I don't intend it that way. But I admit that I don't fully grasp exactly what I'm supposed to be looking at, although I can appreciate the beauty of the illustrations, if that makes any sense. So that's why I didn't make my top 5, more out of my own maybe inadequacies as a reader. Maybe I'd have to read it 2 or 3 more times to get an appreciation out of it. But that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I haven't heard back on my DC interviews for confirmation, but Dennis Camp, is a request I made to chat about Martian Manhunter. So yeah, I'd be happy to. I'd love to sit down with him. I'd love to have him on the show, and I don't know. It might be one of those things where he's like, "Well, it means what you think it means, whatever you bring to it," or does he want us to get something specific? And that's perfectly fair to just say, "Okay, well, I'm putting it out there. This is what it means to me," but another reader might interpret it differently. I don't know. We'll see. I've chatted with him before. Obviously, he's never been on the show, but I've chatted with him before. He's a really interesting guy. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Gotham City Sirens Unfit for Orbit, issue number 4, penultimate issue. Again, the weekly series coming out, so the final issue coming out next week. Written by Leah Williams. She's a writer. Hanning is the artist. Alex Gormis on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. For me, this one came in at number 9. And it's, this was in my top 5 previously for previous issues. One week, it was even my book of the week, I think, when the first issue dropped. I want to be clear that ranking this at number 9 is by no means saying that it's gotten worse. It's actually fantastic. The art by Hanning is wonderful. Again, I continue to absolutely love the characterization of the relationships between the Sirens and the voices that Leah Williams gives them. The only reason this ranks, a bit lower for me this week is just based on the strength of the other books that are out this week. This thing has been consistent throughout. And even now, as I'm kind of flipping through it, I'm like, man, maybe I should have ranked this higher. What do I have higher than it? Yeah, I have it at 8. What I have at 7 and 6. Yeah, it's maybe I could flip flop it with my number 7. But again, this is just a lot of fun. I love seeing Despero. I love the fact that in terms of power level, he's a much more powerful villain than the Gotham City Sirens are used to taking on. But they're holding their own, and I'm just really enjoying this. I love Hanning's rendition of Poison Ivy. She looks formidable. She looks sexy. This is just a fun book, and I keep going back to the previous again last holiday season, the previous weekly Gotham City Sirens series, which I didn't enjoy anywhere near as much, and the more I'm enjoying this, the more I think that had more to do with the art on that previous series than anything else. Yes, it wasn't as strong of a story. It didn't have Despero, who is kind of a nostalgic favorite of mine as a villain. But I think I'm coming to realize that it was the art style on that series that hurt it in my eyes, hurt my enjoyment of it more so than anything else. Because the same writer, and so same relationships and same voices when it comes to the Gotham City Sirens. So why am I enjoying this one so much more? Well, I love the art. So I think that's what I'm pointing to. So still, even though it comes in at 9 for me, or number 8 rather, maybe 7, I could flop it with number 7, as I said. I still high recommend for me, this entire series. So anyway, it's outside your top 5 as well, Rocky, but anything to add?
Yeah, well, I should say it's just out my top 5. I actually put this in at number 7 for me. I really enjoyed this. I think Leah Williams, what I like about Leah Williams' characterization here is that I really like how she sort of distinguishes. We see some distinctive character differences between Poison Ivy, who's prepared to use lethal force, Catwoman, who doesn't use lethal force, and Harley, of course, who certainly uses lethal force, and they're battling Despero's forces. This series started off with all of the Gotham City Sirens. Catwoman asked for Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn's help to basically essentially steal something called a conduit. It ends up that this conduit ends up being this young child, and this young kid is actually capable of enhancing telepathic abilities and enhancing any metahuman abilities, including in particular Despero's mind powers, which Despero wants to use Conduit to essentially use his mind powers, enhance them to take over the Earth. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's it in a nutshell. But how Poison Ivy utilizes Conduit to enhance her own powers, and Poison Ivy, of course, gets some enhancements as well. And Catwoman's interactions. We believe Catwoman was killed, but she was essentially resurrected. And she became her best self, was in similar ways how Despero was sort of resurrected. And just the way that the thought that Leigh Williams put into the plot here, I thought was very well done. I know I could say more about it other than to say I do enjoy this. I continue to say it's better than the first volume. Leigh Williams has done a great job. Hanning's art's fantastic, and I think this is definitely well worth a read and well worth a pickup when this will end in issue 5. Will be the final issue, but this has been really good, and I want to promote Guillaume March's connecting covers for all this series, is which I'm getting. So it's good stuff.
That's not the cover that you're showing right now, though, right?
No, it's not. It's the cover I'm showing right now is not that. But above my head is Guillaume March's Poison Ivy cover.
The cover you're showing right now is the Nubovich cover, and I love that cover. It's this Egyptian theme, which doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the story, but it's just fantastic. Harley Quinn is clearly the mummy. You know, she has bandages wrapped around her. Poison Ivy's wearing a pharaoh kind of crown. Catwoman has, appropriately enough, we know the Egyptians revered cats. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe them to be gods in a way. But she's wearing like an Egyptian feline headdress, which is fantastic. But yeah, I love that cover. I haven't been getting this physically, but I might pick up this issue just for this cover because it's so gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. So,
yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Justice League Unlimited #9 from writer Mark Waid. Dan Mora is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain on colors. Dave Sharp handling the letters. I think this is the one book that's in my top 5 that didn't make Rockies. I actually ranked it in my top 3. I really enjoyed it. It's an epilogue to the We Are Tomorrow story that's been running in Justice League Unlimited and World's Finest. Waid's two titles. And the reason that I put this in here, so we know it's already been announced that there's a couple of events coming out from DC. We're going to have a DC KO series, which feels like a little bit of a crossover, but maybe not, a complete crossover with the Absolute Universe, because it's basically kind of like what we had with the recent Black Canary Lady Shiva, can't even talk, series from Tom King, where, who would win in a fight. But this is a bigger tournament, maybe not unlike the Robin series that Joshua Williamson did a couple years ago. So they needed to decide who in the main universe DC is going to basically be the conduit for all the negative energy that's kind of wildly manifesting everywhere to possibly take on Darkseid. And that's where it comes into this idea of it possibly being a crossover with the Absolute Universe. And so they're going to be these bracket type fights that are coming up. So it's like that is going to tie in with what's going on with the Darkseid Legion, what's going on like in the pages of Superman this month, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. And so, if you kind of want to understand what's going on with the bigger story that really started in Absolute Power, you need to read that We Are Tomorrow series. And then the threads that were kind of left dangling from the We Are Tomorrow series show up in this Justice League Unlimited number 9. And so Dan Mora art is fantastic. It's always classic, but there are so many characters here. And I will say that it's not a typical Mark Waid issue in that he's done a fantastic job up to this point. Every previous issue, we've always had some small character moments, even in the midst of these big events, where some character moments have shined. But I feel like, and I don't begrudge Mark this whatsoever, there's so much packed into this issue that is the one thing that's missing. We don't necessarily get one of those kind of trademark Mark Waid character moments, but there is so much going on here. And if you want to understand what happened in Absolute Power, how that led to the DC All In and the creation of the Absolute Universe, and how that's going to lead into DC KO series coming later on, as well as the Absolute Villain event that's coming later in the year as well, then Justice League Unlimited is a book that you need to be reading. You need to have read the We Are Tomorrow crossover. You need to pick this up, because this is really a bridge from that We Are Tomorrow series into what comes next with Justice League Dark Tomorrow special, which then leads into the DC versus KO. So there's a lot going on in the main DC universe right now. Mark Waid's architecting a lot of that, along with Scott Snyder and Joshua Williamson. So I put this in my top 3, not based on that importance, although it is very, very important, but just based on how much this reminded me of those, previous big events, specifically Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is maybe the gold standard when it comes to big events and making it make sense and packing so much into, one issue of a comic. Waid does a fantastic job of doing that. So, based on how well that was done technically, the gorgeous art from Dan Mora, and how many characters show up here and have something to do and something to say and will play into the event that's moving forward. I just had a blast with this. I was very impressed with how much happens in this issue, whether it's Gorilla Grodd or the Challengers of the Unknown or Mr. Terrific or even at the end with the Trinity of Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. And what it bodes for the future, and what a cliffhanger ending, even Marilyn Moon Knight gets to show up here. Previously, she's only showed up in Joshua Williamson's Superman series. So with everything that's going on, to have the cliffhanger ending where Batman says, hey, in our rush to put together this Justice League Unlimited after the events of Absolute Power, and be sure we include everybody, we've made a terrible mistake. Like what an ending, right? Like a catastrophic error, he calls it. Like, what does that mean? To not find out for another 30 days, that's going to be tough. So, I really enjoyed it. So much to see here, whether it's a Mazo or the Knights in Batman or tons of different incarnations of Supergirl, Batman Beyond, the World Forger, like so much happens in this issue. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was really great. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, this came in at number 6 for me. Just missed my top 5. It was really good. I love that we got this Quantum Quorum, which apparently now will consist of Gorilla Grodd, Time Trapper / Doomsday, and World Forger. And basically, the Omega Energy is eating up time, and it's causing a bunch of time quakes. And this is really, you can already tell what Mark Waid's doing. And this is very, very important to mention. Mark Waid has been, since he started writing World's Finest, he's been slowly rewriting DC's past, but yet he's not rewriting it so much as sort of reinterpreting past stories, introducing past stories, introducing more Silver Age-like stories with modern day sensibilities. And he clearly has an affinity for that type of continuity that existed pre-Original Crisis, maybe just following post-Original Crisis, and all those mixed past continuities. They're clearly they're choosing the best iterations of all these characters. I think that's what's happening, and Mark Waid's making it happen. And to go from We Are Tomorrow into this, and then this with Omega Energy causing this chaos, this will lead into the at some point the DC KO series. It's masterful. It's very well done. And also, so you should be reading Justice League Unlimited for certain, and absolutely be reading Superman, which we'll be getting to later on today as we review that. But the art by Dan Mora is fantastic, and there's the number of characters. You said it. So much has happened here. I strongly recommend that people be reading this. There's a great characterization by Mr. Terrific here, working alongside himself. They managed to rescue Airwave. They pull Airwave out of the past to where he was, because, and I found it was very clever how Mr. Terrific's past self, who was emotionally unattached, was more intelligent than his present self. So one of the weaknesses of Mr. Terrific is that his intelligence is routinely compromised by his emotional attachment to the situation. I think that's very interesting. Because I always find it interesting that, to use an example, Flash's connection to the Speed Force is always enhanced whenever he has an emotional attachment to Linda, for example. Yet you take Mr. Terrific, his emotional, whenever he lets his emotions get involved, he's arguably less intelligent. Or in any event, I thought that was interesting. And again, as a longtime DC reader, I'm absolutely rewarded for having read this. And again, for a whole slew of reasons, mainly due to DC's quality content right now, it didn't make my top 5, but it doesn't mean it's not a really good comic.
I love that sentence. Mr. Terrific working alongside himself.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. If you're checking us out on YouTube, everybody, Rocky has the Thiago da Silva cover up on there. Not really anything to do with the story necessarily, but man, is it an incredible image. It's like half Martian Manhunter, half Joker. It's like so. There's also a Frank Quitely Superman movie variant that's really, really cool. So yeah, again, if you want to know what's going on in the DCU or what's about to happen and how things bridge from the Absolute Power event to the DCKO, yeah, you definitely need to be picking up this book. All right, up next, doesn't make either of our top 5. Not a big surprise. Batman number 161. We're up to chapter 4 of Hush 2, written by Jeph Loeb, Jim Lee on pencil, Scott Williams on inks, Alex Sinclair handles the colors, with letters by Richard Starkings. I actually probably enjoyed this issue more than any previous issue of Hush 2. There are some kind of comments, or it's alluded to in this issue, that this is taking place in present time for the DC universe, which doesn't make any sense, as we've talked about before, mostly because of the characterization for Jason Todd. You know, that makes it seem like it's happening 2 weeks after Hush 1. So the timeline still continues to be wonky as far as, you know, where this should be fitting in to DC continuity. It just doesn't make any sense. On top of which, this is 2 months late. It's going to continue to be late. But yet DC doesn't want to delay the start of Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez's Batman. You know, there's blind bag variants coming for that. I'm sure it'll be a big month for DC's bottom line in terms of sales. But who didn't see this coming? Jim Lee being late? No shit, right? Like, we knew that was coming. So I go back to, you had to have this in the main Batman title, but because Matt Fraction wanted to start, now we already know the second half of the Hush 2, the last 6 issues being its own standalone miniseries. So it's no longer even all going to be in the main Batman title like you wanted. And now we have issues being late. So I'm going to throw the question out there once again. Why'd you have to kick Chip Zdarsky off of Batman to do this, do Hush 2 in the main Batman series? Yeah, really stupid decision, DC. You should have waited until you had the entire thing drawn and then announced it and just released it as a 12 issue on its own, whatever. But neither here nor there. I guess it's, I haven't heard anybody being blown away by this. And I love Jim Lee. Don't get me wrong. Jim is just a fantastic guy. He's great with his fans. Obviously a generational talent when it comes to art. His art style has never been my favorite. Like, I was never, you know, the biggest Jim Lee fan. Did I buy X-Men 1? Well, yeah, of course. Did I buy all 6 covers or whatever? Yeah, of course. You know, we all did back then. And yes, I was buying Jim Lee's X-Men, you know, when it was Uncanny or whatever. Yes, I was a fan of his art, but I wasn't like a Jim Lee fanatic. I didn't, you know, go over to Wildstorm and buy everything they did or whatever. Like, he wasn't my favorite artist and never has been. But yes, I recognize how talented he is and how influential he has been over time. So I say this with the utmost respect for the man. He's no longer at the top of his game. He just isn't, which, you know, I'm not. Hey, guess what? I'm not at the top of my game anymore either when it comes to, I'm older, you know, I can't, like, in terms of doing something that takes physical effort, you know, like, I was an athlete in college. Could I go and compete with my, you know, early 20-year-old self on the lacrosse field? Hell no, I'd get my ass kicked. I'm nowhere near as fast. My hand-eye coordination is nowhere near as good or whatever. It's just a reality of aging and getting older, you know? So is Jim Lee still super talented? Does he maybe have more talent in his little finger than I have in my entire body? Without question. But I don't think there's, any doubt that this isn't his best work, it's still phenomenal and it's still a gorgeous book to look at. But again, I just question the decisions that are made. Cause it takes him more time now because again, he's older. So the decision making just baffles me and bothers me. And, I'm really looking forward to the Matt Fraction Batman, much more so than I am the rest of this Hush 2. And it's going to be interesting. Hush 2 will clearly be an evergreen title for DC in collected edition, just like Hush will. But I wonder if in 10, 15, 20 years, if we compare, like how much has Hush 1, and again, Hush having come, the first Hush 12 issue, having come out in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But let's say that we look at from the year 2027 to the year 2035, that 8-year span. My belief is that in that 8-year span, even though the first Hush will be much older, that version, that collected edition of Hush for that 8-year period will outsell Hush 2 simply because it's better. You understand what I'm saying, Rocky? Like
I do. I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah.
Because this just isn't that great. And word of mouth counts a lot. Word of mouth counts a lot. And, there's something to be said for, anybody who may not even be born right now, I'm talking 2027, or maybe they're too young to read right now. When they get into it, they're going to want to read Hush 1 before they read Hush 2. So there's something to be said for that as well. But my point stands that I just think the first Hush story is just of higher quality than what we're getting here. Sometimes it's true. You can't go back home again. You can't go to the well again. And it's not just true of comics, right? And we see the same thing when we do sequels of movies and TV shows and that sort of stuff. Sometimes you captured lightning in a bottle once and it's hard to do that again. It's never quite as good. It's like making a copy of a copy, right? It's just never the quality is just not as high. So anyway, I talked way too long, gave way too much attention to Hush 2 for it not being in my top. But anything you want to add, Rocky?
Well, not much other than the fact that never. I ranked this. I actually ranked this. It would have been last. Because it's not a captivating story to me. It feels dated. It doesn't feel current, and it's not even that bad. I like Jim Lee's art, but it just feels dated. It doesn't feel. If I was a brand newbie Batman and I just read Hush and maybe reading this, I'd feel more timely. But this was a significant miss. It's like Jeph Loeb very clearly hasn't read a Batman comic since he finished Hush, the original Hush. And it just, for that reason, it's disappointing. And it feels rushed. It really does, the story-wise. And I don't think I don't think there was there clearly wasn't an editor on this that was doing their job. Or rather, they were told to stay silent and let Jeph Loeb do whatever he wanted, because clearly the marketing for this is just, this takes place immediately following Hush 2. Or immediately following Hush. And to the extent that it doesn't make any sense that it immediately follows Hush, who cares? And as a longtime reader, they should have put more thought into it, and also had it and understood. I mean, who doesn't know that Jim Lee is slow? He's a fantastic artist, but he's slow, right? He can't hit a deadline, and so this is going to go on and on and on. It's just it's really disappointing. But I mean, fortunately, DC has got such a strong. They're riddled with fantastic titles right now that this is, even though this Hush is being largely ignored, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I didn't mention where it was ranked for me. It comes in last for me as well at number 11. And you're like, wait, there's 12 books. We'll get to that. Why I'm saying it's 11 and it's last in just a little bit. In fact, right now. Because up next is New History of the DC Universe number 2, written by Mark Waid. Man, gorgeous art from Brad Walker and Mike Allred rather. Trish Mulvihill and Laura Allred on the colors, Todd Klein on letters. So I didn't know that my buddy Brad Walker was doing art on this issue. So main cover by Chris Samnee, and then I turned to the first page, and I'm like, oh my god, that's Brad Walker art. Who I think I own more pages of Brad Walker original art than any other artist, because I just love his style. And he's a fantastic guy as well. I definitely count him as a friend. But I had no idea, so I love that. And the Mike Allred art is very suitable here as well, because really what we're talking about for the majority of these pages are collage pieces, and Allred is fantastic when it comes to composition for those pieces as well. And yes, Allred has a very heavy line weight, and yes, in the past that has bothered me, but I've really come around to enjoying his art based on the Superman Space Age and then the Batman Dark Age books that he did with Mark Russell. So the art in here is second to none. But the reason I don't have this ranked is because I sort of feel like it's not fair. And I did put this as my book of the week when the first issue came out. But this is not structured in a way where it's really a story. And it was a bit of a cheat when I put it as my book of the week, but I went ahead and did it just because I felt like it's so important if you want to understand kind of the current continuity of the DC universe from one of the main architects of the DC universe right now, Mark Waid. So that's why I did go ahead and rank it as my book of, because it's that important. But going forward, this is kind of not eligible for book of the week, if you will. I mean, I'm making up my rules as I go along here, but this is our hill of beans, and we can do whatever we want. And yeah, so I'm not saying this is not important, and I'm not saying I didn't enjoy this, because if you're a DC fan, this is like a must buy. You have to read this. You have to have this as a resource, and on top of which the art is gorgeous. Whether it was the first issue with Ordway and company, or this one with Brad Walker and Mike Allred, but it's not a a comic with a plot and that sort of thing. So I'm excluding it from the rankings for that reason. Otherwise, like based on importance and as a resource, whatever, it would like be number one every week. You know what I mean? Like it's that important and impactful. But that's kind of my thinking behind saying it's like not applicable to put this in the rankings, but it is of vital importance, especially if you're a DC fan, especially if you want to kind of keep up to date with, again, kind of what's going on, what's in continuity, what the order of DC's history is. And I love it. I love Mark Waid, talking through the voice of Barry Allen and sort of giving us, sort of the complete history of the DC universe as it stands right now. And it's also nostalgic in that, going back and seeing these events, whether it's Superman holding Supergirl when she died in Crisis, seeing the crime syndicate, seeing the rogues, the different rogues, villains for various superheroes here. Batman's rogues, you kind of get a rundown, Wonder Woman's, Superman's, Flash's, that sort of thing. So new gods come up, like just again this wouldn't work anywhere near as well in the way that they're doing it if it wasn't for the art of Brad Walker and Mike Allred. So shout out to the artists. They did a fantastic job. The splash page with the Titans with Trigon in the background from Brad Walker, that's a gorgeous piece. Even my favorite vigilante shows up here. The Detroit era of the Justice League is mentioned with a gorgeous collage piece by Mike Allred. Like this is just a must get for DC fans. It's just a must get. On top of which, there's a timeline in the back that goes over the events that are covered in this book, where you get reference to the actual issues that are sometimes it's images or moments. Like, if we talk about Crisis on Infinite Earth 7, that very famous cover by George Perez, it's been homaged so many times with Superman holding the lifeless body of Supergirl. So when the events that Barry Allen is narrating happen, you can then go to this resource in the back of the book and you can see, okay, he's talking about this event happening, and this is the actual DC comic that happened in. And sometimes you'll notice, if you go look at those original comics whose events are being referenced here, that you're going to see that Mike Allred and Brad Walker took inspiration from images in those books, whether the cover or even inside. They took inspiration from the images from the legendary artists that came before, and we're getting their interpretation of those events and those images, and that's nostalgic as well. So yeah, I mean, love this. Again, if I was allowing it to be, rated, it would be my number one book again, for all those reasons I said, like seeing kind of an homage to Superman holding Supergirl's lifeless body, and the Flash disintegrating, Barry Allen Flash disintegrating as he runs the opposite direction of the Anti-Monitor's antimatter canning, which was drawn beautifully by George Perez. And at that time when it happened, Barry Allen was dead. Like, they retconned it later to say, oh, he entered the Speed Force and, he was able to be resurrected or whatever. But that wasn't the plan originally. The plan was he was dead. Barry Allen was dead. He disintegrated. He basically, like, literally disintegrated because of the antimatter. So it happens a little bit different. It's laid out a little bit different panel to panel to panel in the comic. But Brad Walker does a fantastic job here of homaging it. So anyway, just a fantastic book. Like I said, must read for any DC fan. What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I love it, and I want to say the quiet part out loud. The Omega energy that's going through the DC universe right now, that's eating, that like a cancer, is eating up the timelines, creating time quakes, leading to DC KO, and leading to ultimately what we know is going to be some type of culmination and altercation between the mainstream and the absolute DC universe, all of which is super awesome. We know that at the end of the day, they're not going to be doing a new history of the DC universe anytime soon. So if for no other reason, pick this up. We know that at the end of whatever all these events that are happening right now in the absolute and new universe, the mainstream universe, are happening, we know that this is the definitive history of the DC universe. This is how the timeline is going to be reshaped. So I still expect to see some Easter eggs, some hints as to what's to come, because we're going to see how this is how what is currently happening is going to have an impact in the DC universe. And we're getting into Mark Waid's head. Mark Waid is he's the guy that's steering the ship right now at DC, frankly, in terms of the history. Obviously, he's writing this, and so I think be prepared. I personally think that there might be some clues as to what lies ahead in this series, and even though I don't consider it part of my rankings either. But it's very good, must read.
Yeah, I mean, Waid has basically said that there will be hints about what's to come. A couple of fantastic covers. There's a Black Canary cover from Frank Cho, which is awesome, and then there's a Ryan Sook. Ryan Sook had a wraparound cover for the first one, which I somehow missed ordering, and I need to track down and pick up because it's gorgeous. Ryan Sook has a cover for this one. So Scott Koblish cover with hundreds and hundreds of characters. Those are the ones that I ordered when I was pre-ordering this. But I need to pick up that Ryan Sook cover for number one. And the Ryan Sook cover I need for number two, I need to pick up as well, because it homages the Crisis on Infinite Earth 2 cover with the Monitor on it. I definitely have to pick up that cover as well. So as much as I try not to buy multiple covers for the same book, gonna have to for this one, because those two Ryan Sook covers are fantastic. All right, up next we have Mr. Terrific Year 1, number 3. Al Letson on script. Valentin Delandro handles the art for the majority of the issue, with colors by Marisa Louise. But the first 3 pages, which are set in the present, the art and colors are by Edwin Gallman, and letters for the entire thing are by Lucas Catoni. This comes in for me in my top 5. I ranked it at number 4. Didn't come into your top 5, Rocky, but give us your thoughts or anything you want to add.
Well, the story is really good. I continue to be impressed with this story, and Letson's done a really good job on the story. I find it compelling. We continue to get snapshots of Mr. Terrific's past, the tragedy that the loss of his wife and child, and the fact that his wife created a Nexus machine that the current villain Athena Scott as well as Lex Luthor that we meet this issue. They both want to get their hands on this Nexus machine that Mr. Terrific's wife created. One of the minions that works for Athena Scott suspects that Michael Holt is no longer. He believes that Michael Holt was working with Dre Dingles, who they previously killed at the end of issue 1. Of course, and they're right about that. Michael Holt, in fact, is working with them, but Michael Holt does his best to try to continue to fool them, to make him think that he's still grieving while he investigates Athena Scott. And but at the end here, things come to a head where Michael Holt, he gets discovered, and very clearly, all the machinations of Athena Scott, Lex Luthor, and Michael Holt's investigations, it's all coming to a head. And this issue was still really cool setup in terms of mingling the past with the present, and how it's led to Michael Holt's current state of mind, where he wants to, what exactly does the Nexus machine do? I suspect this is probably at some point going to be connected to even Omega Energy or something. I might be wrong about that, but I just love this. And I want to give a shout out to the main cover A. There's a shot of Mr. Terrific running like he's going to jump off a building with a cityscape behind him. It looks absolutely gorgeous, and it's very cleverly done because, frankly, his costume looks in many ways more cool from the back than it does from the fronts in many ways, because it's got the fair play thing on the back leather jacket. So it looks really good, and I think the cover looks great. Cover B is pretty cool as well that I got up. So it's very well done. Yeah, I got this. I ranked this. For me, this came in at number 8 for me, but it could have ranked higher on another week where maybe where the competition wasn't so strong.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, coming in at number 4, and it was tough between this and my number 3. I actually flip flopped them a couple times because yeah, I mean, in a week that not quite as strong with so many good books, this definitely would have been a top 3 for me. I agree with you 100% on this cover. And anybody, obviously Mr. Terrific has a higher profile now than this version of Mr. Terrific has a higher profile now than, I mean, it's completely fair to say, he has a higher profile now than he ever has in the entire history of the character, because there are more people aware of Mr. Terrific than there ever have been because of the Superman movie. And, yes, Discover is fantastic, but keep in mind this is Mr. Terrific year 1, so this is not the same costume he ends up with eventually, but I love that we're getting the year 1 costume here, and that cover by Kari Randolph is fantastic. I completely agree. I love it. From the time I opened it up, I was like, oh my God. When I opened up the file, I was like, oh, it's so good. I love that cover. I immediately had to go and see who did it because I didn't recognize the signature. But the reason I didn't recognize the signature is because they mingled the signature for Kari with the color artist as well, which is fine. But in terms of, why this book continually makes my top 5 is partly because of what a fantastic job Al Letson is doing with incorporating Mr. Terrific into the DCU in a way that feels natural, more so than he ever has before. Like, yeah, he was a member of Jeph Johns' Justice Society, but he always felt a little bit more like an outsider, kind of like Brainiac 5 does for the Legion of Superheroes, because they're obviously very intelligent individuals, right? But they're more about like planning and discovering and then sharing that information with the heroes that go out and are a little bit more physically active in, take a more active role in solving the problems. Now, in the Superman movie, we see a very physical Mr. Terrific with his T-spheres fighting and what have you. And that was a great scene, but there was a little bit of me, as a comic book fan, that I was like, man, that's not really the way that Mr. Terrific, he's a little bit more of a puppet master. He's more about moving the pieces around on the chessboard and outsmarting people rather than being the one that gets hands on. Right. So that, and that's just the way that it is. But this is him early in his career with what Al Letson is doing. And, he's incorporating him more into the DCU, as I said, much more so than he ever has been before, even in those Justice Society books that I mentioned before. And also, we're kind of based on what we're seeing in terms of physical activity and him and Mr. Terrific taking an active role in the investigation of the Nexus engine and his wife's role in that and what have you. He's taking a bit of more hands-on role, but I love what Letson is doing because in a way it kind of explains, because especially the way this issue ends, Mr. Terrific is not, he's not as effective or formidable as a physical active superhero as he is a cerebral one, in planning and setting things up and whatever. That's not his greatest strength. His greatest strength is in solving mysteries and figuring out how things work and inventing things and what have you. Like that's just where his proclivities lie. That's just the kind of character he is. But I love what Letson is doing, and we're getting a Michael Holt that's trying to be more active, physically and solve problems, himself. And it's not necessarily going that well. So in that way, it sort of informs why he may be a character that later on in his career, he knows to kind of step back and allow the people that are like Batman, for example. Like Mr. Terrific is never going to defeat Batman in a fight, like in a fist fight, or martial arts kind of fight. He's just not. That's never going to happen. Again, that's not his strength. But in terms of planning an operation or strategy, whatever, Batman is at the top of his game. But even he is not as good at that as Mr. Terrific. So I love that, and I love how much we're going back to the very origins of Mr. Terrific, and sort of in implanting him or in making him a part of the DC history, right? Whether that be Lex Luthor showing up here, Mercy, whatever. And to your point, Rocky, like if we find out later that the Nexus engine has to do with Omega Energy or what have you, what's going on in the DC universe now in present day, again, that just ties Mr. Terrific in to present events, even more closely, which makes sense to do based on his popularity from the film and how much people were responding to them. And I watched an interview that James Gunn did, kind of his last big interview he did on his press tour, where the host was asking about a Guy Gardner film or Guy Gardner TV series, or the same for Mr. Terrific, because their profiles have never been higher and they're both really popular characters from the film. And Gunn didn't want to comment, on any of that. Because I don't want to comment on internet rumors that may be not substantial or we're just not far enough along to talk about it or whatever. He's like I'd rather tell you about the things that are already in the can, or we've already moved down the pipeline in ways so we can talk about them coming to life. So I say all that to say timing is everything, right? Like Mr. Terrific, he had a series that started, his own solo series that started when the New 52 started in 2011. And I want to say that it went 8 issues. And I previously had, I think, the first 6, but I never got the last 2. And I remember enjoying it. I don't remember why. I think it was just a budget thing. Like when New 52 started, I was buying every single DC New 52 title that was coming out. So cuts had to be made. I just couldn't afford to do that indefinitely. So I think Mr. Terrific was one of the ones I cut for the last 2 issues because I didn't know that it had been canceled already. So I say all that to say, like, once I read the first issue of this version of Mr. Terrific, I went on eBay to try to buy those last 2 issues, and it ended up being cheaper for me to just buy a whole set, like all 8 issues. So I have multiples of, I think, 1 through 6. But I sat down and reread the whole thing, and I loved it. And obviously it was a sales driven decision to cancel that and then start up some of the second wave of New 52 titles. But if that series was coming out now, especially based on the success of the film, that it would go longer than 8 issues. He's been a fan favorite, and I think the actor Edie Gathman, I can't remember his last name right now.
Yeah, I always, it's hard to remember, I find too.
Yeah. I'll look it up right now because I want to give him credit because he did a fantastic job.
Edie something, but
Edie Gathegi is his name. Yeah, he did a fantastic job. And to finish my thought, if that New 52 series was coming out now, if it was just 2 or 3 issues into it, it would last a lot longer than 8 issues. So hopefully, even though this is already set to be a miniseries, 6 issues, hopefully it gets a bump in sales because of what's going on with the Superman movie. Because I'm just digging this so much. So,
Yeah.
all right. Up next, we have Superman number 28. This comes in at number 5 for me. Again, there are other weeks where it would have been in my top 3, but just based on the strength of the books this week, it only comes in at number 5. Written by Joshua Williamson, Dan Mora handles the art as well as the main cover. Alejandro Sanchez on colors, letters by Ariana Mayer, and this is a very important book when it comes to what's going on with Absolute Universe, what's going on with Darkseid, what's happening with the Darkseid Legion. Superman meets the Saturn Girl of the Darkseid Legion for the first time here, and there's a bit of a mental face-off, if you will. We also get to see Lightning Lad and Cosmic Boy from the Darkseid Legion. So very impactful. The Dan Mora art is fantastic. We get some collage pieces which are really interesting, and it's definitely setting things up for what's to come. And I'm here for it. The Joshua Williamson Superman title continues to be very central to what's going on in the DC universe overall, coming out of Absolute Power, Darkseid's death, Omega Energy, all of that stuff. And then to top it off, and this very nearly had me sneaking it into my top 3. And if it was more than just one page, I guarantee it would have been my top 3, because one of my favorite characters shows up on the last page, and it's a character I've had audience members, listeners of the podcast, reach out to me before about how this could be one of my favorite characters, because he's a divisive character, and I have my reasons, and it's too much to go into here, but Superboy-PRIME shows up here in the last page, and I think the last time we saw him was in a Jeph Johns written crossover for Dark Knight's Death Metal, where he sort of had a redemption in a way in that series. He shows up here seemingly not necessarily overtly. I mean, again, we don't know. It's just one page. Not having experienced that redemption in a way. Like, again, we don't get a lot of him because, again, he just shows up on the last page.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say he's not redeemed. I think that's still an open
I mean,
question.
his voice. Well, the reason I say that is because, like, based on the emotionality, that was one of my favorite issues. I gave it Book of the Week when it came out that week, because I loved how emotional and impactful it was. But the reason that it almost, like, is Mark Waid dismissing what happened there or not? I mean, possibly not. But the reason that I even entertained it as a possibility is because of the tone that he's talking to Superman. You ready to kill some nerds? Yeah, readers, I'm back. I smell an event coming, or whatever. Just the snarkiness harkens back to sort of when he was a jerk and a dick and pretty much outright villain, as opposed to the little bit of a more gentle Superboy-PRIME we got right at the end of Jeph Johns. So, but it's possible that Waid will still acknowledge, that redemption that we got from Jeph Johns. But at the end of the day, he still is going to have a little bit of snark. But, if we go back and look at the earliest, if we look at pre-Infinite Crisis Superboy-PRIME, when there's no argument that he was a hero. He was a hero in the pages of Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was a hero when he first showed up, his first appearance. DC Comics Presents 87, I believe it is, where Superman teams up with Superboy. And at that time, he wasn't even called Superboy-PRIME. He's just called Superboy.
He was technically from our Earth. He was called Superboy-PRIME because he was from our Earth.
Right.
Like, that was the central conceit at the time.
That moniker didn't come till much later. But my point being that there was no doubt that he was a hero. And the way that he talked then was, much more like Superboy, like almost like a classic Silver Age Superboy, or maybe you could even say early Bronze Age Superboy, as opposed to the voice that Superboy Prime, once he became called Superboy-PRIME in the Infinite Crisis series, and took more of a dark turn and what have you, and developed that more snarky way of talking. If we look at this Superboy-PRIME again, we get one page and we get two word balloons, but I just mention it to say that the vocabulary, the syntax, whatever that we're getting from this Superboy-PRIME that shows up on this last page is the more villainous, snarky Superboy-PRIME, as opposed to the earlier, more innocent Superboy-PRIME. But maybe he is redeemed, but he's spent a long time with that snark, and maybe that's what he's grown into. So but again, that's part of what I can't wait to find out. Superboy-PRIME in the hands of what I consider probably the most knowledgeable superhero writer ever. Yep. In Mark Waid, and yes, Joshua Williamson is the one writing this, but if you think that Mark Waid and Joshua Williamson aren't talking, then I got a bridge to sell you.
That's right.
This is 100% architected into what is coming with the DCU. So yes, getting Joshua Williamson to write Superboy-PRIME, but whatever's going to happen here is tied in, overall to what Scott Snyder, Joshua Williamson, and Mark Waid are architecting for the DCU. Superboy-PRIME there's never been input on Superboy-PRIME up to this point from Mark Waid. And that's what I'm really interested to see. What is this version of Superboy-PRIME? How's he going to fit into this version of the DCU? Because Rocky and I have talked about this many times before. Coming out of Absolute Power in the all-in era of DC, the all-in era of DC feels more like classic, top tier, best eras of DC that ever have been. Like it feels like that swoosh logo era of DC, which was a really high point. It feels like the best eras of DC that happened during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like that's what the all-in era feels like. Like it's embracing like everything. We talked before about everything matters and them trying to do that. And how we said, if everything matters, then nothing matters. And if everything happened, then, it lessens the importance of certain impactful events because they could directly contradict other events. You can't have everything count, because if everything counts, then nothing counts. But that's part of why we're getting the new history of the DCU from Mark Waid, because he's specifically telling us what's in canon. It doesn't invalidate those other stories that might be your favorites. It's just saying in the main universe of DC, those didn't necessarily happen. They happened in, alternate DC universes, alternate timelines. So now that we're getting sort of a more cohesive DCU with a kind of a cleaned up, more streamlined continuity, what does Superboy-PRIME look like now in that context, in that continuity? That's what I can't wait to find out in the hands of Joshua Williamson with input from Mark Waid. We've already had Scott Snyder give input on Superboy-PRIME, obviously because Scott Snyder was the architect of Dark Knight's Death Metal. So I have high regard for how Scott Snyder sees Superboy-PRIME as well, because it was in the context of Dark Knight's Death Metal that we got that Jeph Johns story. So I'm sure Scott and Jeph talked about that. So yeah, I say all that to say I'm really excited to see what Superboy. But I will say, the caveat is I'm setting myself up to be disappointed if it doesn't go, the way that I hope it goes. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm really excited that Superboy-PRIME showed up here and wonderfully illustrated by Dan Mora with kind of his classic Superboy-PRIME costume. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Oh, I love this. I've never been a Superboy-PRIME fan. I was when in his original iteration. I was not a fan of Infinite Crisis. I was an outlier. I hated what Jeph Johns did to him, making him evil, and I don't think he's capable of redemption. He was a genocidal maniac. You can't. And I think Jeph Johns failed to properly redeem him. I don't think he's redeemable. But having said that, I got no problem eating my words. Sure, redeem him, bring him back. Why? Because he's going to be a fun character, and I think he's needed, frankly, against Darkseid. And frankly, since they technically did redeem him, he is a popular character. Of course, he's going to be in this event. And in the hands of Mark Waid, I think he will be more properly redeemed. And I think it's just awesome. As far as the Legion of Darkseid here is awesome. Saturn Girl, Emra, manipulating Superman, seeing the death, the destruction, how powerful Lightning Lad is. He can crush the entire Justice League satellite easily with his powers. The murder of Martha Kent in this issue, very graphic, very deadly. It shows the fact that the Legion of Darkseid would create those mental images in Superman's head shows what they're capable of. It shows what they will do if they have to. And it's quite something. Saturn Girl says something to Superman that is that we already know, that he is the counterpoint to Darkseid, that there's something special about him. Darkseid considers him the central guy to take out. It's also worth noting that Superman, at the beginning, while he's sitting in his bedroom staring at a Legionnaire ring, a flight ring, he's thinking as he's staring at it, he knows that something's wrong with time. Superman can sense something is wrong. His intuition is telling him something is wrong. He doesn't need to feel the Omega energy. He knows, and I like that. Mark Waid, because Superman is, it's all been leading to this. Superman is the North Star of the DC universe. We know that from Doomsday Clock. Even if Doomsday Clock doesn't still apply, it kind of does. Superman is the North Star of the DC universe. He's a good guy. He senses something's wrong. And he can see through even the mental powers of Saturn Girl. He sees the truth. And then at the end, when Time Trapper shows up, i.e. Doomsday, who after already been to the Justice League Watchtower, telling Superman, look, I've come from the future. It's a disaster. It's infected by Darkseid, the Legion of Darkseid. Something is wrong. I created this pocket universe, and I have this guy in this that you should meet in this pocket universe. That's Superboy-PRIME. And what's interesting about the Pocket Universe is that at the end of Darkseid's redemption story for Superboy-PRIME, he ended up in a Pocket Universe, but we didn't know the exact origins of how that Pocket Universe came to be in that story. Well, just a quick history, post the original Crisis, when John Byrne eliminated the Legion of Superheroes from history and eliminated Superboy from history in the post-original Crisis, in the Man of Steel era, the John Byrne Man of Steel era, the explanation when the Legionnaires did finally show up was that the Time Trapper created a pocket universe, and that's how they had the explanation of how they managed to survive. Well, that pocket universe is now back. So this all fits in very well with continuity. Mark Waid, of course, Joshua Williamson, clearly they're communicating. It's masterfully done. And to have Superboy-PRIME show up like that with his attitude, I think he's still on. He's on the side of angels, but will Superboy-PRIME slip up and maybe rip some limbs? Because remember, this is a guy that, at least in one iteration, Superboy-PRIME didn't have a problem ripping heads off and decapitating someone. And if Superman's not up to that task, because it's the use of lethal force against the Legion of Darkseid, imagine Superboy-PRIME. I mean, he's a guy that you want on your side. If you need a superpowered individual that's not afraid to kill, that's Superboy-PRIME. Whether or not he still kills, whether or not he's truly been redeemed on the side of the Superman Angels, I guess, as you say, we'll have to wait and see. But man, it's really good, and it did come in. This came into my top 3 this week, so I quite like that.
Yeah, and there's fantastic covers for this. There's a Nathan Zerdy cover that's fantastic that Rocky's got on the screen right now with Imra, Superman's cape ripped. Guillaume March has a cover with Clark Kent that's fantastic. Dan Mora has the main cover, which is gorgeous, but there's also a spot gloss version of that. Then there's a Salvador LaRocca cover, which is an incentive cover, unfortunately, 1 in 25. That's also really awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of fantastic covers for this week. And yeah, interesting your take on Superboy-PRIME that he's not redeemed. Like, I get it. Like, a lot of people, he's a divisive character as well. In a way, at one point, I would have compared him to Amanda Waller in kind of the hate people have for him. Like, he's a character that you love to hate. And I totally get where you're coming with him being irredeemable. I think for me, the reason that I've always I loved him when he, like, the pre-Infinite Crisis version of him. I loved him, especially because of what John Byrne did in eliminating Superboy. So it was like the way we could sort of have what John Byrne did but still have a Superboy that didn't invalidate that. So that was
Yeah.
another part of the reason that I liked him so much. So I mean, I agree with you. I wish he had never been turned into the jerk and the villain that he was, at one point turned into. And I totally see your point and concede your point that, yeah, in a way he's not redeemable. But I again, selfishly, I just want him to be redeemed because,
Well, I do too. If I'm honest, I like I said, I was quite passionate about it in the past, but I'm getting more forgiving in my old age.
and I will say, like, if I ever had a chance, like Pie in the Sky chance to write a DC book with any character, I would choose to write a Superboy-PRIME book because I have my own ideas about how to redeem him.
Interesting.
Yeah, that would be like if I could work on any DC character,
Yeah.
I would write it. Yeah, I would write a Superboy-PRIME
You'll have
story.
to tell me your pitch over some scotch.
Yeah, yeah. Man, that's a long.
Yeah.
It has to do with like a lot of like. Yeah, it has to do with a lot
we'll
of
need a
like.
bottle.
Yeah, because it has to do like it would be a very personal story for me.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
let's move on. Up next, the Flash Bad Moon Rising special number 1. This obviously ties into the Cy Spurrier Flash run that is coming to an end with issue number 25. Wait, did I just hear cheering? Cy Spurrier wrote a very interesting blog post a few days ago. It might have even been last week about him choosing to leave. And I read it. I read the entirety of it. I will say, man, even when that guy's not writing a comic, when he's just sort of writing to say, hey, here's what I think, he's still very wordy and very descriptive and maybe, overly flowery language that doesn't necessarily need, like the guy, he's never heard the term economy of language, clearly. But
Yeah.
there was a, and I'm not quoting it directly. I'll kind of paraphrase here from what I remember. But one of the things that he said that it really clicked for me why his Flash run for me personally hasn't resonated. He sort of fundamentally, in my mind, misunderstands who Flash is, especially Wally West Flash, because this is not true of every DC character. Like I hear it with Batman probably the most, and I agree with it about Batman. I've heard it many times from many writers, and they say that what they love about Batman as a character is that he's so flexible as a character that you can write any kind of story with Batman. You could write a crime noir story, you could write a detective story, you can write a family story, you could write a horror story, you can write traditional superhero story, like anything. It all works for Batman. And Cy Spurrier was basically saying the same thing about Flash. And I completely disagree. That is not, I don't think that Wally West is that type of character. To me, he's a character where you can write a science fiction story, you can write a family story, obviously, you can write a traditional superhero story. But when you start talking about horror or stories that deal with like existential stuff, and that's what Spurrier did, right? Cosmic horror is what he called his is how he categorized his story. And you then try to lean into some family stuff, whatever. Now we're getting into more existential stuff as we're winding down here, and it's just not working for me. And I think it's because again, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of who Wally West Flash is. I just disagree with that statement 100%. So it's no surprise that this hasn't really been landing for me. That being said, I absolutely love this Flash Bad Moon Rising special that ties into what Cy Spurrier is doing, but it's not written by Cy Spurrier. It's written by Alex Paknadel, who I am a fan of. Alex, traditionally, I've very much enjoyed his work previously. He's done stuff for Valiant, the pre current iteration of Valiant when it first came back before they forcibly removed the guy that brought it back to Nisham Dasani. So I'm a fan of Alex. It's drawn by Daniel Bayliss. I think the art is fantastic as well. Colors are by Matt Herms, lettered by Buddy Badone. And it actually doesn't have that much Wally in it. This is a character piece about Shade. typically people think of Shade as a Hawkman villain. Now, part of the reason that I probably love this so much, it just missed my top 5 coming at number 6, is I like the Shade. I like the Shade as a villain. I like, his what his powers are. I think he's visually interesting. I've talked about this in the past. How I'm also a big fan of Gentleman Ghost. Similar to the Shade in terms of character design, with sort of that Victorian age clothing. He's got he's wearing a suit. He's got a top hat. It's a 3-piece suit. So he's got the vest. He's got the high collar. He's got the tie, top hat, cane. Sometimes tails on his top coat. I just love that aesthetic. Again, Gentleman Ghost even has a monocle as well. I love the Shade. And so I think Alex Paknadel here gave us probably the best character piece on the Shade that I've ever read, in terms of making him relatable, adding layers to him at times, especially early on appearances, before we got into more sophisticated modern storytelling in comics. I'm especially thinking of when he showed up in Hawkman issues, in the early Bronze Age. He was a much more of kind of a mustache twirling villain. But later he did become a little bit more of a Flash villain as opposed to a Hawkman villain. But I still feel like he's probably equally, both. But I just thought this was a fantastic character piece. So even though it didn't make my top 5, it just missed out at number 6. But it did make your top 5, Rocky, which might surprise a lot of people, being that this does tie into Cy Spurrier's Flash run. Again, not written by Cy Spurrier though. But anyway, give us your thoughts on it.
Well, first of all, this is just I like it because it's a really good character story. It's good for all intents and purposes. But for the last few pages, this could be a done-in-one story of the Shade, and because really what it establishes, and we should say that in the last issue of the Flash, written by Cy Spurrier, nonsensically the Shade just shows up, and why? In a story that was already kind of convoluted, with the Eclipso, some form of Eclipso wanting to basically blot out the moon and create a solar eclipse and take over the planet. In a very confusing way, dealing with a bunch of cloned Flashes that don't make much sense, and mischaracterizations on the entire Flash family, in my opinion. All of a sudden, the Shade shows up. Well, this is actually the explanation as to why the Shade shows up. And it's actually some decent character motivations here. And basically, we get the history of we get the background of the Shade, where the Shade has the love of his life. The Shade is over 200. He's a 200-year-old character. He was basically he lived in Opal City for the last 2 centuries, and his lover is dying. Hope O'Dare is dying, and in order to basically he wants to make a deal with he goes on a quest in the Shadowlands, which is the living darkness that gives him his powers. But he's always sensed that there was a presence in the Shadowlands. But over 200 years, the Shade has never bothered to truly investigate who is in control of the Shadowlands. And in this case, he discovers that it's Eclipso. And and Eclipso basically makes him a deal, basically saying, well, if I tell you what, I will grant immortality to your Hope if you help me. Well, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to. He doesn't, because the Shade, who is normally a villain, he doesn't want that to happen to Hope, and he basically instead he would rather be stripped of his immortality, and in order to and have no ill consequence to Hope, and unfortunately, Eclipso still wants him to do his bidding, and he doesn't really have much of a choice. And of course, that involves battling against the Flash. But there's a very interesting development here where the Shade has a moment where he thinks he's talking to Wally, and I think he is talking to Wally, and where what the Flash says to him, "Look, you can remove his bargaining chip." And there's a suggestion here that at first I thought that the Shade was going to sacrifice the love of his life, in order to remove her as a bargaining chip that Eclipso had. But I think Shade has a plan here to betray Eclipso, I think, but maybe I'm wrong. But I kind of like that. I'm far more interested in the resolution of the Flash story now because of this story than I am about the story itself. So, again, Alex Paknadel did a really great job here. Maybe he was told the general idea by Cy Spurrier, but this was very well done. And ironically, the Flash isn't in this comic very much, but it is very well written, and it made my top 5. In fact, it made my top 3. I enjoyed it that much.
Wow, fantastic. So, it is. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm glad you brought up the Eclipso thing. So, as far as I remember, they've never tied Eclipso to the Shadowlands before. So, I thought, completely makes sense. And I like Eclipso as a villain too. I think he's interesting, and he offers he enables certain DC to do, and DC writers to do certain things that are interesting. And obviously he was a part of the DC All-In Special or what have you. So I like that he's got kind of a prominent role currently in DC. And yeah, I love that he's sort of the overlord of the Shadowlands, if you will. So, all right, up next we have Absolute Wonder Woman number 10 from writer Kelly Thompson, Hayden Sherman on art, Jordan Blair on colors, Becca Carey on letters. Not much to say here in terms of things that haven't been said before. Absolute Wonder Woman continues to be really, really good. This comes in at number 7 for me. And yeah, this issue was no exception. Continue to enjoy what's being done here. So what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, this never made my top 5. It actually comes in at number 10, even though I've really been enjoying this. Generally, I wish Wonder Woman would move away from being grounded too much in mythology, but frankly, there's something about the way Kelly Thompson is scripting this Absolute Wonder Woman in the Absolute Universe that has really pulled me in and has made me eat my words in all the best way possible, and I've just been enjoying it. And in particular, one of the things that I was complaining about when this series began, which I've done a flip-flop on because of the quality of the writing, is I didn't want Wonder Woman to be like the embodiment of kindness and perfection and everything else. But she very much is. And this issue really doubles down on that. We get flashbacks where Cersei is basically, talking with the gods, different gods, and it's essential for their plan that they have this young innocent, this woman, this young girl, Wonder Woman, this young Diana. She was so powerful, she was so kind that she somehow can even talk to the gods, and she can protect, and the whole reason why that they love Diana is that she is naturally gifted, so she has a natural kindness even above and beyond the gifts that enhance her kindness. And she has a way of disarming, and monsters won't see her coming. And then the ways of men won't will lower their guard when they see a young girl or a woman, when they see Wonder Woman do it. Now, I'm not sure how true that actually is, but there is something about, the best weapon against monsters is somebody who literally embodies love and compassion. And you really see that here. And we get all this background in the midst of what's happening presently, where Wonder Woman is in Area 51. She's trapped in the maze with Ferdinand, with Ferdinand and Petra, this young girl that she rescued. She manages. Ferdinand gets injured. He's sort of like the monocle, like bull character, and she manages to get Petra out of the maze, where Steve Trevor and the rest of Steve Trevor and Etta Candy and Barbara Minerva, they can all care for her. But Wonder Woman goes back to try to rescue Ferdinand, who's incapacitated by this Queen Clea and her her men fishes. And so there's a lot of action here, and I continue to be impressed. I mean, Hayden Sherman's art continues to get. I just think it continues to get better and better. His creativity on the layouts, the designs of each page are just really excellent. I particularly love the sequence where Ferdinand and Wonder Woman are fighting the forces of Queen Clea. and Ferdinand is protecting her with his body, and just the dialogue, the sacrifice, the arrogance of the villains, the arrogance of the gods that we get. We Kelly Thompson is doing a really good job making it clear just how important Wonder Woman is and how unique she is within the absolute universe itself. Wonder Woman she really is the embodiment, and I mean that in a way that I have an appreciation for that now, probably because it's juxtaposed against the absolute darkness of the absolute universe, that we keep being reminded of the absolute darkness of Darkseid, of the darkness of the Legion of Darksides, uh, the gloomy nature of Justice League Unlimited, the Nexus Machine and Mr. Terrific, the gloomy nature of what's happening in the pages of Superman. Something really bad is coming, and we need all the weapons we can get. And when we have, I mean, so when I read this, it reinforces in my mind just how important Wonder Woman, absolute Wonder Woman, will likely play in the ongoing inevitable battle with the forces of absolute Darkseid. Uh, and I don't know. I thought this is very well done, and I got to say, just because it never made my top five, I really enjoyed it. It just goes to show again the strength of the infield that DC has, even outside the top five. Very well done.
Yeah, the scenes with the young Wonder Woman that you're mentioning were, yeah, they were fantastic. Because you're right, like getting this version of Wonder Woman who, clearly, like you mentioned, part of what makes her who she is, and part of her, the strength of her character, what have you, it has 100% to do with who she is as a, as a kind, compassionate individual. So that's really really interesting, no doubt. So, all right. Up next, we have DC versus Vampires World War V, issue number 11. Matthew Rosenberg is the writer, Otto Schmidt on art, Berlugi Casolino on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters, and then the backup story with Shade the Changing Girl, written by Cecil Castellucci. Marley Zarcone is the artist, Marisa Louise on colors, Lucas Catoni on letters. And that is the same creative team that did the Shade the Changing Girl series back in the day. So, anyway, this did not make my list for top five. I'm enjoying it, but I'm really ready for this whole DC versus vampires universe to go away. I feel like it's starting to drag a little bit at this point. So this comes in at number 10 for me, but it was in your top five, so you've
Oh
been
yeah,
enjoying it a lot more than I
I
have.
have.
So give us your thoughts.
Yeah, you know what? I got to be honest with you. I thought that if ever there was a chance for this series, which I know you haven't been a big fan of, you've been very diplomatic as to your reasons as to why. But I thought if ever there was a chance that this could maybe force you to maybe make it crack your top five, that it would be this issue. So I'd be curious to know. I'll ask. You can respond after in terms of how you would rank this issue, because I think this is the penultimate issue. There's one issue left after this. The humans and the vampires are coming together because they know they got to face Darkseid, and they feel completely screwed, and so they have to team up. And Barbara Gordon, of course, Batgirl, is the leader of the vampires, and just she's given this inspiring speech about how humans and vampires have to get together and leave it to Damien to literally execute her, to kill her, and this time for good. She's not coming back. And it's absolutely horrific what happens. Meanwhile, there's a fantastic scene with the vampiric Wonder Woman slowly being tortured and slowly killed and beaten by by Granny Goodness's uh, Darkseid's forces or whatever, and one, she plays possum, and she absolutely decapitates Guillotina. Fantastic sequence. I love the language, the dialogue, and Wonder Woman, of course, then ascends to be the queen, and ultimately they find themselves back, the humans and the vampires, having to once again form an alliance, which appears to completely fracture and fall apart. You think that all is lost, and I mean, the SHIT completely hits the fan all around. You think, oh boy, we're screwed. And what I particularly liked at the end here, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it, I loved it. that, Wonder Woman, vampiric Wonder Woman says, look, we can defeat Darkseid. We have a game plan. We can build a weapon. Harley Quinn tells them how to, she recalls seeing she remembers how to build a particular weapon that they can utilize. And in any event, but the one thing that is a requirement before vampires and humans can get together and team up is Wonder Woman says they have to kill Damian because he killed their queen. They need that. And in a very powerful moment, Alfred understands that, yes, that's right, it has to be done. Damian's actions finally caught up with him, and he did endanger the survival of both species, quite frankly. It was horrific what Damian did. And there was, I think, a powerful moment when Alfred kills Damian at the end, in order to cement the alliance between the vampires and the humans. Now, is Damian really dead? I think he is. I really think he is. I hope he is, because it would have this moment have more power. But I think I love it, and I particularly, one of my favorite characters in this series has been Wonder Woman as a vampire. This is definitely not a kind, compassionate Wonder Woman. This is vampiric Wonder Woman in all its glory, and so I think maybe I love Absolute Wonder Woman with all her love and compassion. But if you want the flip side, this is a series for you. And I really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to see how it all wraps up and to see how many of the characters die, and how many. Matthew Rosenberg seems to be having a lot of fun playing with the action figures in the sandbox, and boy, does it show. But what are your thoughts on it? I was curious about your thoughts about what happened to Damian Wayne.
Yeah, there's no part of me that thinks even for a second that Damien's dead. So that didn't have really
Yeah.
any impact for me. I think
Right.
that's the whole reason that Alfred basically, says I have to be the one to kill him,
Yeah.
because he's not actually dead. He like shunted him into some like pocket universe or something along those lines. So yeah, I don't for a second think that he's dead. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I can appreciate the vampiric Wonder Woman, as well, and I do appreciate that the story is, it is starting to build, and it feels like that, we're getting to the climax. But yeah, again, there's just a feeling for me that's like the series has gone on long enough, and it just, yeah, ready for it to come to an end. So
Yeah.
anyway, up next, a book that's in both of our top five, Green Arrow number 26, written by Chris Condon, drawn by Montos, colors by Adriana Lucas, letters by Buddy Bedoin. I'm going to give you a chance to go first.
All right. Let me see here. Well, yeah, this is in my top five. Currently, I have it ranked at number 4. I don't. It could creep up by the time I hear your thoughts on it, because I know you really liked it. Uh, we mentioned before how we have this Crimson Archer that showed up, who's this villain, and this Crimson Archer last issue shot Roy Harper with an arrow that contained a drug that made him look like he overdosed. And in this, what's the powerful narrative in this issue is just it's not necessarily a lot happens in this issue, but so much of it is conveyed with the art, and this is where the art really shines through. And Montos's art is just perfect for this issue, because it shows. It reminds us of that very famous a very famous comic. I think it was Green Lantern, Green Arrow, issue 76, where is it 76? The issue where Roy Harper is a drug overdose. Um, yeah, Jace will find it as I continue to talk. But in any event, very powerful, because the doctors, everyone convinced that Roy Harper is going to be that has overdosed, and that he relapsed, and that he's just a druggie, and he failed. But the powerful moments between Oliver Queen and Roy's daughter, Leah, I think it's so well done. I mean, she's there to care for him, and he knows, uh, Oliver knows that something is wrong, that this Roy Harper would not do this, because he just finished talking to Roy on that rooftop, and there's no way that something would have happened. And of course, he ultimately discovers by the end of the issue that, in fact, that this Crimson Archer likely had something to do with what happened with Roy. But you could just tell, just emotionally, what Oliver's going through, and I like the fact that one thing that Chris Condon does so well here is that I kind of like the fact that the Green Arrow family, he keeps it tight. He doesn't have every single Green Arrow member show up. You know, like we got the Green Arrow family, I think, is too damn huge, which I think Joshua Williamson's run, if it's one thing that run told me, is that there's too many people shooting an arrow, having a bow and arrow in the DC universe. I like the fact that we have Leon and we have Black Canary and Oliver that are dealing with the fallout from this. And because they're the ones that would be most affected, and I like that it feels more real, it feels more visceral, and it just feels it feels like there's father-daughter moments as well. And Oliver is a father himself. Roy's a father to Leon, and that fantastic flashback to that classic classic cover, Neil Adams cover, and just it's very well done. It was very powerful. And if you're a fan of Green Arrow, especially the classic Green Arrow, my God, this is a must-have issue, and this is a must-have arc. And I would think that this is something that should be on the top of everyone's pull list because this is very well done. So curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so Green Arrow 70, it's Green Lantern 76 actually.
Oh, okay.
That's the first. That's the beginning of the Hard Traveling Heroes, where he's shooting the lantern.
Okay.
Very very classic cover. 85 is the cover where Speedy is shooting up, and so yeah, that's what's alluded to here. So, and you're right, like it shows up in many ways, and there are Roy Harper fans who don't appreciate that that's revisited like time and time again. Specifically thinking of I think it's called, is it the Cry for Justice follow up? It's by J.T. Kroll. There's a Red
That's
Hood
right. Yeah.
mini series was a bit divisive as a series. That's where Roy Harper kind of loses it, and
He
it almost
loses his
paints him
arm,
as
doesn't he? He loses his arm.
yeah, he loses his arm. He's abusive in relationships and whatever. He's definitely not a hero, but maybe looking back on it now, it's a little of its time, but I can completely understand it. It's not, certainly when it was coming out, it was not what people wanted their heroes to be, and it kind of tainted Roy Harper in a way, even more so than he had been previously with kind of the drug issues. So I appreciate that Chris Condon is doing this because it's interesting in a way. I can see both sides of it. It could be Roy Harper fans like, oh, why are you dredging this up again? And it's a bit even meta at some points where it's like, hey, once somebody who's abused drugs, always a drug abuser, right? It's like kind of like, hey, once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. But Roy hasn't had any relapses, and so I enjoyed in this issue that Oliver, like even when the doctor comes in, he's like, no, I know this guy. Like Oliver Queen believes in Roy Harper and believes that he hasn't relapsed, and is like, no, there's got to be another answer. It's not an overdose. Get out there and find out what the real reason is. And the doctor's saying, no, it's an overdose, whatever. But I appreciated, first of all, the relatability, and again, it leans in and underscores the idea that this Green Arrow series it's a street level series, right? It is not a cosmic time traveling story or series like we had before when Joshua Williamson was writing it. This is a grounded story with grounded characters, and yes, in this case, Roy Harper was set up. Oliver Queen is able to go to investigate the alley where this happened. He finds the arrow that's got a hypodermic needle in it, and what happened. He goes and talks to the police detective that he's started to establish a relationship with. She gives him context. Hey, yeah, we've been finding these. Clearly, people have been dying of overdoses at a much higher level, whatever. So the idea of drugs and abusing drugs is something that people can relate to. Maybe if you yourself, hopefully you yourself haven't, but you probably know somebody who has, or know somebody who's OD'd or what have you. And the idea of addiction as a disease and whatever, some people can't help themselves, unfortunately. I mean, I sort of have an addictive personality myself. Like when I get interested in something, I really embrace it, and I go like whole hog. maybe to the extent of tunnel vision and take a little bit overboard. It's part of the reason I've never experimented with drugs. Like, what if I like it? I won't be able to stop. Like, I can completely see, that I know that about myself. So I never even tried anything, not even, pot, or, which is legal here in Arizona or whatever. Like, nothing. Like, I'm just not going to go down that path. It's too much of a risk. But there are people that fall into that trap. And so again, like, the relatability of it, but Oliver Queen standing by, Oliver Queen believing in Roy Harper, the reaction that Leah has, wanting to go out and find answers and do something. Like, these are just very human reactions. And the whole thing wouldn't work anywhere near as well as it does without the gorgeous art from Montos, whether that's the emotionality in the body language or in the facial expressions or, the action scenes or what have you. He's just the perfect, the flashback sequences, as Rocky mentioned. There's some kind of collages here, if you will, or some montage pieces that are done really, really well. So, I just loved everything about this. I thought the colors, especially kind of the shadows and the shading and the darker color palette when Oliver Queen is in Roy Harper's room. The serious events have happened. It's setting the tone very, very well. The mystery of who this Crimson Archer isn't really in a lot of ways touched on here in this issue. I'm okay with that. Some other books that we've reviewed recently, even in this same episode, where we've talked about dragging the mystery on too long. I mean, this is only the second issue of this arc, and Crimson Archer showed up, at the very end of last. And I have every confidence that we'll start to get answers next issue, because Chris Condon seems to be somebody that just paces things a little bit quicker than some of the other things we've seen, like an Absolute Martian Manhunter and what have you. So yeah, huge fan of this. Definitely in my top 3. For all the reasons I stated, that calling back to, a kind of a seminal moment in DC history. I mean, that was a big deal when they did that back in Green Lantern 85. But calling it back and not having it where, Roy relapsed. That, you do that for shock value or what have you, to call back to it. And I love that Condon didn't cheapen it. He's come up with a story where it appears that Roy Harper has overdosed. So you can bring in that, call back to that and have people questioning or whatever. But we as readers know that he hasn't. Oliver Queen's belief in him, turns out to be well-founded. Like that's just good storytelling. That's really fantastic. And again, the Montos art. So yeah, I like, as soon as I finished reading this issue, I sent Rocky a message. I was like, man, Green Arrow this week, right? Green Arrow 26 just kicks ass. It's such a fantastic issue. So, all right, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail. We've got Green Lantern number 25, Starbreaker Supremacy, Part 1, written by Jeremy Adams, art and main cover by Xermanico, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. This makes both of our top 5 once again. Jeremy Adams continues to knock it out of the park. He's doing a fantastic job. As far as covers for this one go, there's a Carlos Diando variant that I thought was pretty interesting. But I specifically wanted to call out the Steven Subic glow in the dark foil variant, because I'm not usually one that likes Steven Subic art, but I'm just curious to know. Like, I'm very curious what that's going to look like, like when it's glowing in the dark. Like, is that going to be, something that looks fantastic, or because sometimes his stuff can look a little wonky to me when it comes to faces and body language, what have you. So I'm just curious what that's going to look like. But regardless, this is a fun issue. We've been having the Lanterns on a mission to basically collect the things that they need to rebuild the Lanterns, to keep the central lantern, central power batteries, so that they can keep the emotional spectrum from spinning out of control. And resulting in more fractal lanterns and what have you. And that's what Starbreaker's going for. So we get a little bit of hints on what's going on with the Kelly and Ellie thing. But but we don't get. That's a bit of a slow burn, almost like a B plot. But I appreciate that Jeremy keeps going back to it and mentioning it. But basically, we have the two different teams: the Starbreaker team and the Green Lantern team going to Gemworld and basically racing for the resources they need to get these batteries back online. Excuse me. Obviously, if the Starbreaker team wins, that's bad. The emotional spectrum stays fractured, and the Lanterns aren't able to reestablish the stability. So they go to Gemworld. There's an action-packed scene, gorgeous art from Xermanico, great colors as well from Romulo Fajardo Jr. And then at the end, we get the results of what happens, and it wasn't what I was expecting in a way. I didn't expect it to go as easy as the Lanterns thought, because ultimately there's 3 sort of crystals that can power these batteries, and the Starbreaker team ends up with 2. The Lanterns are only able to secure 1. And so at the end here, what we see is that it's almost like the Sorrow Lantern, Nathan Broom. It's almost like his abilities have taken over, because even though we get the reunification of Aya and Razor, Aya being the AI lantern that has to do with running the ship. I can't remember, what's the ship called. Do you remember?
I can't remember. No.
I'll look it up. It's gonna bug me. I'll look it up here in a second. But anyway, she has love for Razor, and she shows back up, and Razor's really excited. And then at that moment, the Starbreakers basically reestablish control, and all of a sudden, it's they can't feel anything. It's like they are cut off from the emotional spectrum, and it's shown in a really interesting way with everything being colored in gray. So it's a great cliffhanger to end on, because I do appreciate that Aya shows up here, in the last issue. She's a character from the Green Lantern cartoon that's basically made her main DCU debut last issue. So you expected that reunion to be very emotional, and it started out to be. Razor's about to say that he loves her when that event happens, and that event also looks like it wipes out Ellie. So that's going to be interesting to see what the story is there. But it's so interesting that Aya has just shown up, right? Because she is an AI construct, and she's the one individual that remains the most brightly colored after everybody else. It looks kind of drab, and Razor saying, I don't feel anything at all. So it's so interesting because Aya is she's an AI construct, right? She's an artificial person, but she must on some level have emotions, because she does purport to love Razor. And again, it was an emotional reunion, or the start of an emotional reunion when before the event happens. So you wonder if, and maybe it's similar to kind of like Data from Star Trek, right? Like when he has his emotion chip, he feels things because he's programmed to feel things. So in a way, you could say it's not true emotion. But as far as what they experience, it feels real. And if it feels real, then you could make the argument it's just as impactful as, real emotions that are biologically controlled as opposed to controlled by technology. So will this be a situation where this character that just showed up for the first time in the DCU in main universe last issue ends up playing a pivotal role because she's able to make better decisions or plan things better or whatever, because she's not cut off from her emotions, because her emotions are technological in nature, right, rather than biological. I could see Jeremy Adams doing something like that, and the thought is really, really intriguing. So, yeah, I mean, Jeremy Adams continues to knock it out of the park when it comes to this Green Lantern thing, like building on what Jeph Johns has done before. I mean, there was a time where we wouldn't really be talking about emotion. You wouldn't be able to tell this kind of story that so heavily hinges on emotion with the Green Lantern Corps, because Jeph Johns hadn't created the emotional spectrum, hadn't come up with the idea of the emotional spectrum yet. And when you think about it, and Jeremy's talked about this on the show before, when you think about it, willpower isn't necessarily an emotion. And originally, when they, when the Hal Jordan version of Green Lantern was created, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was based on willpower and the fact that he was fearless, right? Like he was a test pilot, and it was he kind of like Daredevil over on Marvel, right? The man without fear, and that was the idea for decades, that Hal Jordan was fearless, and but that's not really that's not human, that's not realistic, right? And so to DC's credit, don't know which writer exactly, maybe it was Jeph Johns, maybe it was somebody else, maybe it was DC editorial approval or whatever, but they did eventually change it to the ability to overcome fear, the ability to still make decisions and still take action even though you might be scared, right? So it's still there in the back of your mind, but you're able to function and still make split second decisions to fly a test plane, jet, whatever. And that factors in a lot more closely to the emotional spectrum, more so than, oh, he's without fear. Because at the end of the day, that's just not realistic. Like if you're human, you feel fear, unless that part of your brain has been damaged or something like that. That's a whole nother story. But my point remains that you wouldn't be able to tell a story like this that hinges on emotion and can bring in so many different aspects of it and facets of it without the groundwork that Jeph Johns has, had lain before. But credit to Jeremy Adams for taking that groundwork and not retrotting the same stories. There's nothing about this that feels redundant. It feels additive. Like, okay, well, if the emotional spectrum and how all these different colored lanterns and ring bearers can use their particular emotion to wield their ring and have powers and abilities or whatever, what happens if they can't feel their emotions for a particular thing? What happens if Aya, this artificial construct, can? Like, there's so many things that can be done here. And yeah, I'm just a huge fan, of what this entails. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So give us your thoughts on it, Rocky. I'm going to find out what the name of that stupid spaceship is called. It's going to bug me
Yeah.
if I don't.
I think the hidden gem here. I think the true hero at the end of the day might end up being Kelly. I think Ellie at the beginning of this issue is still trying to get into Kelly's mind without Kelly knowing about it. So you could speculate, building on your comments, Jace, that Kelly is suppressing some emotions. She's got a deeply repressed emotional issue, perhaps even some trauma that she hasn't dealt with, symbolized by the door of her mind that Ellie is trying to get into in order to help Kelly deal with something, but Kelly doesn't want her to let her in. And you mentioned the astute observation that at the end, even though it looks like the Starbreaker lantern maybe has the edge over the emotional spectrum because it has two of those stones that enhance its powers from Gemworld, where Amethyst is, Princess of Gemworld, that the enhancement of the sorrow power doesn't seem to have affected Aya, maybe because she's an artificial construct, as illustrated by the fact that she still has some color. But it may not affect Kelly either. We don't see Kelly. So it might, in fact, be the case that Kelly herself is unaffected, or might appear to be affected on the outside, but within her mind, her true power, the true power of the gauntlet. Jeremy Adams has hinted in interviews that we still don't know the true power of the gauntlet. In fact, that was established in previous issues where well, I think it was Simon Baez said they're not really sure exactly. There's still things about the gauntlet that Kelly has that they don't really understand. Well, that might be one of the saving graces that plays out at the end to ultimately allow them to perhaps overcome the Starbreakers. But so many moving parts here. It's just really great. The art is Xermanico's art is fantastic. This really feels like an event. And, I remember back in the day when Jeremy Adams was writing Flash and we thought he wasn't, you and I, along with so many others, we felt that respectfully that DC wasn't giving Jeremy Adams the respect or acknowledgement that he deserved. And here he is writing Green Lantern issue 25, and he gets a foil cover. Or pardon me, a glow in the dark cover.
Glow in the dark, yeah.
Glow in the dark. I mean, that's just awesome. And I mean, I don't know if you can consider that a de facto award or no prize, but anyways, I thought it was. I think that's something. But yeah, I really love this issue. Absolutely made my top 5. Actually, scratch that. It did make my top 3. So in any event, great issue.
Yeah, did I give my ranking? Yeah, I mean this is in my top 3 as well. So anyway, Interceptor, that's what the spaceship's called. I know you guys are all on pins and needles waiting. So yeah, Interceptor. I kept wanting to call it Razor, but I knew it wasn't Razor because that's obviously the name of, um, the lantern that I is in love with. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for the books that we're going to talk about in detail this week. There's a ton of other books coming out, most of them being San Diego Comic-Con exclusives. So I'll kind of go over the other books that are out this week, especially if you're going to be at Comic-Con. Let me just sort them differently here. Okay, so we have a DC KO SDCC Ashcan Special Edition number 1. I'm sure that's going to be given out at one of the DC panels. So not 100% sure on my schedule yet if I'm going to be able to attend. I mean, typically I attend the DC panels and I live tweet them. So be sure you're following me on social media. I try to do all of them. I may not be able to. It just depends on what other interview obligations are. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But anyway, that is technically coming out this week. There's also an Absolute Batman number 1, San Diego Comic-Con JLU Virgin variant. There's also a Absolute Batman number 10 Forward Comics SDCC John Zhang foil variant. There's a Jacques connecting variant that Jacques going to be selling there for issues 9 and 10. You can get that at his table. And then I think it's at the KRS has an Absolute Batman 8. KRS Comics has an Absolute Batman 8 black and white variant. Absolute Wonder Woman 1 is getting a JLU variant. Absolute Superman number 1 JLU variant. There's a Batman logo variant for Batman number 158. There's also a Supergirl 1 Comic Mint. They're both sharing the ability to sell this variant of Supergirl number 1 at San Diego Comic-Con. There's a CGC. CGC is doing its first variant cover ever. If you submit a book to be graded at CGC, you'll have the option to buy a Superman 680 crypto cover. And then there's a Superman logo Virgin variant. Supergirl San Diego Comic-Con Virgin variant. There's a Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong Kevin McGuire variant, which is really awesome. And then a Superman Unlimited number 1 Jim Lee wraparound, as well as a New History of the DC Universe number 1 black and white. It's Stanley Art Germ's Wonder Woman cover that he did as a variant for New History of the DCU number 1, but it's a black and white version of that. So yeah, a ton of other books that are available this week if you're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. And then like a lot of these will be available obviously on eBay after, but you pay a little bit of a premium for those. But if you're curious, you can go to the websites of some of these companies that are selling them, and you can order them there, and they're not necessarily more expensive if you're getting, buying it directly from their website. Obviously, you have to pay shipping, but it gives you a chance to check them out. So as far as collections that are out this week, let me get it in front of me. Because it's a little bit of a smaller week when it comes to collections this week. There's only sorry, I was trying to get it in front of me. There's only 3 of them. So we've got Nightwing by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo is getting an omnibus, so that collects the entirety of that run, which is issues 78 through 96, as well as the Nightwing annual from 2021. And then there's a crossover with Superman, Son of Kal-El, issue number 9. So it's 608 pages for $100. It's, again, hardcover, comes to the dust jacket, all that stuff. There's a Superman, The City of Tomorrow compendium trade paperback. This is collecting kind of the Joe Kelly, along with J.M. DeMatteis, Mark Miller, Stuart Immonen, Ed McGuinness. They all were working on Superman in this time period. So it's issues 151 to 159 of the Superman title, 573 to 581 of Adventures of Superman, Action Comics 760 to 768, Superman Man of Steel 95 to 103, Superman Y2K #1. So it's right around the year 2000. It's 1,040 pages for $60, perfect bound. It's a fun era. It is the Triangle era, just kind of later after his death and resurrection, what have you. And then finally, DC Horror presents Creature Commandos trade paperback, which collects the recent Creature Commandos series, issues 1 through 6, from writer David Dastmalchian, with art by Jesus Huervas. So that's it for collections this week. So a little bit smaller in terms of the amount of collections that are out this week, but probably because there's so many San Diego Comic-Con variants, as I mentioned. But time to give our rankings. Again, even though there's 12 books, I only have 11 ranked because just not going to rank New History of the DCU because it's not a sort of a traditional comic. But anyway, I'll make you go first, Rocky. What are your give us your rankings?
Well, I put my rankings. New History of the DCU is not really in the rankings, so I'll put it at number 12. But number 11, I put Batman 161. The Hush series just continues to disappoint. And coming in at number 10 was Absolute Wonder Woman number 10, even though I enjoyed it, but it was just too much competition. Number 9, Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 5. Number 8, Mr. Terrific, year 1, issue 3. Coming in at number 7, Gotham City Sirens, Unfit for Orbit, number 4. Number 6, Justice League Unlimited, number 9. And my top 5 are coming in at number 5, DCV Vampires, issue 11. Number 4, I put at Green Arrow, number 26 issue. And then number 3, coming in at number 3, I have Flash, Bad Moon Rising. And number 2, Superman 28. And at number 1, and this push Superman 28 out of number 1, I changed my mind as I was reviewing it. I'm putting in Green Lantern 25, Jeremy Adams. It's just too damn cool. Every issue feels like it's a build up to an event, or feels like an event, between the writing of Jeremy Adams and the incredible Xermanico art. It's just fantastic. So coming in number 1 for me is Green Lantern number 25.
Wow, man, I love that we rank these now because it's so interesting to see. Like I'm of the two of us, I'm the bigger Superman fan. I feel like I don't know, maybe you argue with me, but I have Superman at number 5 and you have it at number 2. So it's a fantastic issue. So interesting. And I love Green Lantern as well, but that's not my book of the week, but it's close. But yeah, it's so interesting when we do these rankings. So anyway, yeah, so I didn't rank New History of the DCU. So we kind of have the same last place book, Batman 161, for all the reasons we talked about at number 11. My number 10 is DC versus Vampires World War V, number 11. At number 9, Absolute Martian Manhunter. At number 8, I have Gotham City Sirens, Unfit for Orbit. But again, I mean, I loved the scenes, especially with the younger Wonder Woman in Absolute Wonder Woman. And so that's kind of why it narrowly edges out Gotham City Sirens. But I could flip, like they're so close. They're almost tied. Almost want to rank them both at 7.5. So anyway, Gotham City Sirens at 8, and then Absolute Wonder Woman at number 7. And then just missing out, and it is a fantastic character piece, but just missing out on my top 5 is the Flash Bad Moon Rising number special that comes in at number 6. And then for my top 5, as I mentioned, Superman 28 at number 5. Number 4, I have Mr. Terrific Year 1 for all those reasons I mentioned. Justice League Unlimited, number 9, which want to talk about feeling like an event, a must read. That comes in at number 3. And then number 2 for me, I have Green Lantern, number 2. And number 1, I have Green Arrow, just narrowly edging out Green Lantern. I easily could have gone with Green Lantern. But yeah, a good week for Heroes of the Emerald variety here on our podcast. So yeah, fantastic books this week. Hope you guys all enjoyed them. Don't forget, be sure you're following the Comic Source on social media, especially this week for all that San Diego Comic-Con content. Obviously, a lot of my interviews will be coming out later the following week. But if you're listening to our podcast feed, the Comic Source podcast feed is available whatever platform or app you get your podcast. You can go there and listen to not only all the Comic Source content that comes out, including the weekly DC Spotlight, but also thousands and thousands of past episodes. But if you are checking us out there, we appreciate it. Please subscribe so you don't miss any content. But also don't forget to head over to YouTube and subscribe to Comic Space Boom ! That's Rocky's channel on YouTube, where the Comic Source content comes out. The DC Spotlight comes out every week. And then subscribe to the Comic Source on YouTube as well, where all the rest of the Comic Source content comes out. For both of those channels, like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Specifically for this episode, like, we love to get conversations going in the comments for our DC Spotlight episodes. So particularly for this issue, a couple things come to mind I would like people to comment on. Give us your thoughts on Mr. Terrific. Like, are you enjoying the flashback, especially if you've seen the Superman movie? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Really curious. What are your thoughts on Absolute Martian Manhunter? Are you picking up on stuff that we're not picking up on when it comes to visuals and color, especially? I also would like to know, do people agree with what Rocky and I were saying about, will Hush 2 in a collected format, will it sell better than Hush 1, or will Hush 1 always outsell, for the same period of time? Will Hush 1 always outsell Hush 2? Is that just because Hush 1 comes before, or is it because Hush 1 or Hush 2 is just worse quality? Like, yeah, these are the kind of conversations and kind of things that I wonder about and love to get going in the comment section. So,
and also about Superboy-PRIME. About Superboy-PRIME, do they think that do people watching, do you think that he's going to be redeemed, or if he's going to go back to being evil?
Or is he, in the words of or the title of another great Mark Waid book, is he irredeemable?
Yeah.
Can he be? Yeah. Can he be redeemed? Is he a character you love to hate? Like, I hate to hate Amanda Waller, but I love to hate her in a way. But yeah,
I'll ask another one. Is Damian actually dead in DCV Vampires number 11?
That's another great one. I don't think he's dead. But I agree with you, Rocky. I hope that he is, because it will be more impactful. But I mean, on the other hand, we all thought, and shock value, maybe we all thought Barbara Gordon was dead, but then she came back. But in the first DC versus Vampires series, Jan died, right?
Yeah.
Or was it Zan? Yeah, Jan, the guy, the male Wonder Twin.
Right,
Zan, yeah. Yeah, Zan and Jaina. Yeah, Zan got blended up by Green Lantern. He's never come back. He's actually dead. So anyway, leave some comments. These are the kind of conversations we like to get going in there. So again, we appreciate the support, everybody. If you're going to be at San Diego Comicon, definitely hit us up. Let us know. We'd love to meet up with you, take a photo, what have you. So that's going to do it for this episode. Again, apologies. Next week's episodes may be delayed. We'll just have to play it by ear. See how tired we are from our nerd Super Bowl that is San Diego Comic-Con. So that's going to do it. We appreciate you guys joining us as always. We'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.